Whenever I clear my throat, it is the exact like rhythm of the like hi-hat at the beginning of Call Me Little Sunshine. And so every time I clear my throat, I then get the song stuck in my head. Yeah, it's a problem. Anyways, 1, 2, 3. Last week, you told me about Mary Whitehouse and the video nasties.
Certainly did.
Yes, and the ways which you could get your ass arrested or otherwise prosecuted for possession or distribution of movies, largely in the horror genre in the United Kingdom. And I was surprised by how far-reaching that was, because I consider the UK to be considerably less up its ass about offensive content than the United States is.
Yeah.
And it's weird that it got that far over there when it never did here. But there is a reason for that. And there have been a few instances where our film and music industries had to go into crisis and self-censorship mode in order to stop the government from dropping the hammer on them.
Interesting.
Yeah. Now, a thing you probably know about us over here in the United States is that we're real big on the First Amendment to our Constitution.
Yes.
The one about free speech.
Yeah.
As such, there's considerable barrier to official government censorship. It's really hard for the government to step in and censor anything because of the First Amendment. Much like you were saying last week about obscene content being the catch-all that allowed for legal ramifications in the UK. Obscenity is also one of the few ways the government can actually step in and ban something here. But as we also discussed, the definition of obscenity is incredibly subjective and hard to police. Doesn't mean folks don't try, though. So the first huge bout of pressure faced by our film industry came in the 1920s, when films were, to many sensibilities, pretty saucy. While you weren't necessarily getting like the graphic sex or violence or drug use or crime
in the 30s.
The 20s. 1920s.
In the 20s? I bet films weren't that saucy in the 20s.
Well, I mean,
what are we talking,
comparatively.
Like a glimpse of ankle?
You had people who were, well, I'll get in a little bit more about that. But for one, you're talking about movies that often challenge the status quo in various ways. You're talking about a lot of like women in saucy, seductive kind of roles. A lot of the like film noir stuff where you had femme fatales and all of that kind of jazz. Actual jazz. You had just a lot of stuff that brushed up against societal taboos that was coming up in movies. So I think you'd probably be surprised at how scandalous some of that stuff, even from a modern lens, is. It's not going to look like movies now. You're not going to have like
sure.
the hardcore sex in a movie from back then, but you are going to have more innuendo, more skin, more. I mean, have you seen how women dressed in like flapper stuff in the 1920s and things? They're like naked. A lot of that shit.
To use your term, it is indeed saucy.
It's saucy, yeah.
Saucy.
I will still sometimes see something from like the 20s and be like, they are not wearing clothes. They're just on stage in like nipple pasties, you know?
Yeah. Sauce.
Lots of sauce. So yeah, not quite the way that, you know, nothing you would see in a standard evening of HBO now. But for the time, there was a lot of racy and titillating content that struck audiences as deeply immoral. And that was paired with the rise of tabloid culture, which detailed all the sordid goings-on of the Hollywood elite. And shit didn't look great. There was drinking and drugs and affairs and rapes and murders and so on. And it really came to a head with the alleged rape and murder of Virginia Rapay by the extremely popular actor Fatty Arbuckle, which was like, they were at a party. You've heard of this?
I have. Yeah. Do go on.
They were at a party. She, you know, died under sort of mysterious circumstances. And it was alleged that he had, you know, sodomized her with a bottle and all of this stuff. And so he was actually eventually acquitted of all those charges after 3 different trials. And the jury went so far as to issue him a formal apology for the suffering years of ostracization and the loss of his career caused, as his movies were banned and his attempt at restarting his career
Well,
floundered.
He was just a movie. He was a movie star then by trade.
He was
Yes.
a movie
Right.
star.
Okay. Why have I got it in my head that he was connected to baseball?
I can see that. I mean, Fatty Arbuckle is like a big actor dude. He looks kind of Babe Ruth-esque.
Yeah,
so,
maybe.
Yeah. And it's the same time period, right? It's
sure. Yeah.
So all those guys kind of had the same vibe about them. So I don't know if he was ever in anything that was about baseball or things like that, but he was like a comedic actor, largely. So yeah, regardless of whether or not he was innocent, the cultural damage had been done. And concerned citizens groups reacting to the sensational tales of darkness and debauchery in the papes began demanding accountability in Hollywood. They worried that the content of these films, which seemed to celebrate immoral lifestyles, would corrupt everyday citizens and topple society as we know it.
So the Roaring Twenties was lit then. It was
lit. It was real lit. Yeah,
it absolutely. Was going off.
Yeah, because when you're looking at the 20s in the United States, you have people who ironically, right before the crash in the 30s, people have like more money to spend. There are more people who are in cities. There's more leisure activities, and taboos have sort of loosened enough that you have people hanging out in like men and women together social things, dance halls, all that stuff. So yeah, it's much more, liberated. For young people, it's much more liberated than it had ever really been before, when you were living often in like rural areas where, as I've talked about before, church was the center of town, or where you didn't work with people of the opposite sex, you didn't interact with them. So yeah, the 20s was hopping, especially in cities and particularly in Hollywood. So the attention of the government, of course, is now turning on Hollywood because of these demands, from the people to say, hey, we have to do something about this, because it's not simply naughty movies, but that it's causing people to do naughty things in real life. And we don't want that impacting society.
I see.
So it became clear to those making films that if they didn't do something themselves, they were going to find themselves slapped with obscenity charges and have to deal with a lot worse than just some public outcry. The kind of stuff you were talking about, people actually getting prosecuted.
Yeah,
criminalizing it. Keep in mind, by the way, it wasn't just the sex, drugs, and improvisational jazz that people were worried about in these flicks.
Can be dangerous, very dangerous.
It can be very dangerous. The 20s in Hollywood saw women in film being given power and agency in ways that made normies real uncomfortable.
Yeah.
You had women directors, you had queer directors, you had queer women directors, both behind and in front of the camera. You had films and filmmakers fucking with normative American standards, and that was just as offensive as the sex and violence. When the Depression hit, Hollywood was luring people to theaters with salacious films like Babyface, Scarface, and Freaks, knowing folks didn't have much money to spend and needed a real good reason to toss it to the box office. You're not just going to go for any old thing. You want to see something a little scandalous with your money. And these kinds of films deeply challenged the American status quo. They were movies about class struggle, where gangsters came off as cool and heroic, and women were allowed to be sexually liberated and in charge, and even villains sometimes.
Freaks Hollywood is so great.
Freaks is wild shit, man. That is, they play it every now and again on TCM, and for some reason I always watch it and I'm always like, my brain, what is happening here? But it's a worthwhile watch. I recommend it. What was I saying?
You've got to fucking know that you're going to see some wild shit if you're going to spend money to go to the pictures.
It's true. So Hollywood was allowing people the fantasy of a world where their entire lives weren't ruled by the whims of elite politicians and bankers and corporate types, the people who had cost them everything. It's a dangerous message to tell people that there could be another way. So it becomes kind of clear that obscenity was a bit of a cover for fucking with hegemony. So enter William H. Hayes, president of the Motion Picture Producers and Distributors of America, or the MPPDA, who ostensibly, to prevent filmmakers from having to constantly walk a tightrope of legality with their films and be in a perpetual fight with the government over obscenity, created the Hollywood Production Code, which has come to be referred to now as the Hays Code.
Wonderful.
The Hays Code, you're going to love the Hays Code, buddy. The Hays Code had 3 guiding principles regarding the content of films. The guideline number 1.
Give me a year. Put this into a year for me.
1930.
When 1930. Okay.
Yes. So number 1, no picture shall be produced which will lower the moral standards of those who see it. Hence, the sympathy of the audience shall never be thrown to the side of crime, wrongdoing, evil, or sin.
Wow.
Right? That obviously cancels out a lot of your mobster movies and things like that.
100%. Forget sympathetic.
Yeah.
Right?
You are not getting
redemption, forget redemption arcs, none of that shit.
No dark, gritty origin stories, no redemption arcs. It was often crucial that if there was a crime in a film, it needed to be punished on screen so that you did not sympathize at all with the criminal. You had to know crime doesn't pay.
Oh, that keeps things simple.
Yeah, of course, obviously. Wouldn't want people thinking through
I don't want to be
concepts like
troubled by duality of meaning, subtext. I don't want any of that.
Absolutely not. So number 2, correct standards of life, subject only to the requirements of drama and entertainment, shall be presented.
Correct, huh?
Correct standards
according to who?
Yeah.
I see the problem here.
You see the problem here? Number 3, law, natural or human, shall not be ridiculed, nor shall sympathy be created for its violation. Okay. That one's a little bit, I don't know. I think that can be interpreted in a lot of ways. Well, obviously the law.
You've just repeated the first rule again, haven't you?
Like, that's the thing. It's mostly the first rule.
But
and
again,
a little
like
bit
the
of the
Obscene
second
Publications Act, whoever fucking writes this act gets to decide
what that all means. Yeah.
Yes.
And I think, what kind of makes this is like, it's both of those things. It's, law, the actual law. You can't have people sympathize with crime, natural or human, meaning like obviously you can't have stuff like homosexuality or stuff like that in it.
Of course.
It's just, it's kind of a restating of the same thing. So to guide in making sure these principles were maintained, there were 2 lists filmmakers could refer to.
Oh, this is fascinating.
Yeah.
Such a great parallel.
You're gonna love these.
Yeah.
The don'ts and the be carefuls. The don'ts were laid out.
Is that what they were called?
Yeah.
Be careful.
Here's the don'ts. It's laid out like this. Resolved that those things which are included in the following list shall not appear in pictures produced by the members of this association, irrespective of the manner in which they are treated. So anything on this don't list, I'm about to read some things to you from, could not be in a movie.
Don't ever show
even
me
if you condemned
shit.
It, whatever.
Even if I was punished for doing it.
Even if you're punished
on screen,
you could not put it in a movie at all.
Wonderful. Hit me.
Pointed profanity by either title or lip. This includes the words God, Lord, Jesus, Christ, unless they be used reverently in connection with proper religious ceremonies.
So blasphemy is out.
Damn, yeah. God, spelled Gawd, and every other profane and vulgar expression, however it may be spelled.
Oh, God. In hell. No, that would be out.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, you're donezo, buddy. Any licentious or suggestive nudity in fact or in silhouette, and any lecherous or licentious notice thereof by characters in the picture, the illegal traffics in drugs, any inference of sex perversion, white slavery, miscegenation, sex
black slavery, A-okay.
Black slavery is fine. No white
slavery. Crack the fuck on.
Yep. Miscegenation, which is sex relationships between the white and black races. You could not show mixed race relationships in a movie. Yeah, that's a don't. Not a be careful. Don't.
I am aghast.
Yeah, I wish people could see your face right now. Well, I guess they will when I put the YouTube video up, but yeah.
By relationship, you mean romantic relationship? Or just
romantic
like
relationship. You could have a black servant in a movie.
Oh yeah,
you could not be in a romantic relationship with.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's that. Sex hygiene and venereal diseases, scenes of actual childbirth in fact or in silhouette, ridicule of the clergy, or willful offense to any nation, race, or creed. So that's your don'ts.
That's narrowed the kind of the cool zone quite dramatically, hasn't it? There ain't got much space to play there as a creative.
No. And the be carefuls are going to narrow it down even more. So the be carefuls are laid out like this. Be it further resolved that special care be exercised in the manner in which the following subjects are treated, to the end that vulgarity and suggestiveness may be eliminated and that good taste may be emphasized. This is a long list. I'll just pick a few from it.
Yeah. Sure.
The use of the flag, arson, use of firearms, theft, robbery, safe cracking, and dynamiting of trains, mines, buildings, etc. You want to hear the parenthetical on that?
Yeah.
Having in mind the effect which a too detailed description of these may have upon the moron. Brutality and possible gruesomeness, technique of committing murder by whatever method. We could not have a podcast under the Hays Code.
God, no.
Methods of smuggling, attitude towards public characters and institutions. You don't want to,
sass.
What?
Just sass, no sass. Sass
well,
is
like
out.
Basically, like no, you don't want people to have a negative attitude towards the government or
the
Rockefellers
sure.
or
Imagine
like
if a moron saw that and caught on.
Come on,
and decided he was going to
sassing the president all over the place.
Cracking wise.
Yep. Sale of women or of a woman selling her virtue. First night scenes.
Saucy.
Man and woman in bed together. Deliberate seduction of girls, which I like because, like, what if it's accidental seduction? Can you put that in there? Like, oops, the girl's in love with me. That's fine.
No.
The institution of marriage. This is be careful.
Come with me a second. What if this is with people? Could I do it with puppets?
I must say it probably wouldn't have worked.
Okay.
I don't think you could get around it that way.
Does it cover? Would it cover cartoons? Would it cover like early
anything you would see in like anything that a studio would release?
Yeah.
So yeah, pretty much.
Wow.
Because when you're looking at the cartoons and stuff, they're being produced by like Warner Brothers and Disney and all that.
Yeah,
so
of course.
they're gonna be part of this.
Yeah.
And excessive or lustful kissing, particular when one character the other is a heavy, which I'm not entirely sure what that means. But
physically or in terms of, are they intimidating? Are they?
Yeah, I feel like maybe it has something to do with like criminality or something like that, but I don't know. I'm sure I could Google it, but
as opposed to literally,
generously
proportioned.
You got to be careful about excessive kissing of fatties.
What if a moron were to see it?
This is the theme of
that's now
think of the morons.
Mark, could you, with a clear conscience, do this before a moron? And if the answer is no, it's out.
Oh Lord, ableism is a wild thing. So obviously it wasn't illegal to put these things into movies again because First Amendment. But
just super brief diversion here, right?
Yeah, go for it.
Alan and I talk about this often. We often think back to our upbringing in South Wales and marvel at the shit we would regularly hear, and let's be honest, say that we in a million fucking years wouldn't give voice to in 2022.
Oh yeah.
For example, a common question, if somebody has done something stupid or silly, would be to ask, are you simple? Which
is basically like the R word for you, right?
Exactly. Like, that guy's simple. There's a Welsh word, tup, TWP, tup, which essentially means, simple of thought.
Right.
Which is, ableist slur, just a fucking flat out ableist slur.
No, honestly, there's so many times, like, whether it's like something ableist like that. I mean, because obviously growing up, the R word was like a big one here.
Oh, of course.
Everyone
Yeah.
said it. My mom will still say it sometimes. And I'm like, Mother, it is 2022.
Yeah.
That's not a thing we say. And like any sort of like gay slur, things like that. When I was in college,
sure.
people still said that's gay, meaning bad. I never did, but it was like a thing people said all the time.
I'm certain you would still see it thrown around with abandon in schoolyards even today.
Today?
I'm certain. In
I
the
don't
UK.
think so here. I think that, I mean, I don't know, maybe somewhere in like the Midwest that's like real Bible Belty, but generally, I don't think so.
Is one of those which I think has outgrown.
Right.
Because that'll happen to call something moronic.
Yeah. It's like, if you know the history, you know, technically it's an ableist slur, but language has evolved to the point where it's completely divorced from that. It's most stupid, idiot things like they're all ableist slurs from the early 20th century.
Yeah.
We just don't use them that way now, or don't think of them that way now. So, and there's people who will make the argument that thus we shouldn't use them now. I don't know. I think it's good arguments on either end of that, but they are definitely in general not things people are connecting to.
Yeah, they've
intellectual disability.
They've become divorced from their etymological roots.
Yes, exactly. But in the case of this, obviously you can tell that's what they mean.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
This is still very much connected to the idea of intellectual disability when they're talking about it here. So wild that is in the description. So as I was saying, it's not illegal to put these things into movies because of the
But you got to watch.
But you were going to be hard pressed to be able to get your movie financed and distributed on a large scale, as the major studios were trying to adhere to these guidelines to avoid government censorship. So this meant that movies had to be real creative about the ways in which they presented content that might be offensive. And to their credit, filmmakers at the time made some very funny and interesting movies that coded and veiled queer characters, sexual promiscuity, use of illicit substances, and so on. But as time wore on, people's patience with the code wore thin.
Good.
The market for independent and avant-garde films blossomed. The French Nouvelle Vague and other foreign film movements gained popularity. A burgeoning civil rights movement was occurring, which made banning things like interracial relationships kind of awkward.
Yes.
TV happened, which was pretty well cornering the market on family-friendly fare.
Yeah.
And it started to be much less profitable by the mid to late 1950s for studios to adhere strictly to rules set out in a moral panic some 30 years prior. So bit by bit, restrictions loosened. And it was the absolute masterpiece of a movie, Some Like It Hot, in 1960, that's considered to have broken the Hays Code for good. If you've never seen it, have you seen Some Like It Hot?
I know of it, I haven't seen it.
Okay, well, for those who are unfamiliar with Some Like It Hot, the basic plot is that Jack Lemmon and Tony Curtis are starving musicians who accidentally witness what is basically the St. Valentine's Day massacre, but fictionalized. And now the mob is pursuing them. So in order to try to get away, they cross-dress and join a band, like a literal musical band of women that are traveling and playing shows. Now, Tony Curtis, when they get on board this train of women, immediately falls for Marilyn Monroe and her bubbly airhead character, Sugar, but has to try to woo her while maintaining his cover, leading to all kinds of hijinks. The movie was actually produced without Hays Code approval for pretty obvious reasons, and that's without mentioning the blatantly gay punchline of the movie that I won't give away for those who haven't seen it. Go watch Some Like It Hot. It's an absolute treasure. And the movie was a huge success. So it was clear that audiences weren't as sensitive to racy and taboo content anymore, which was the thing that had spurred on the need for these regulations in the first place. So the code technically remained in place through a good chunk of the 60s, but it was beginning to become transparently meaningless as many films appealed denial of certification and won, despite content that was obviously on the do not list. And films
cracking parallels to the video nasties list here, when so many attempted prosecutions just died on their ass and made a mockery of the entire artifice.
Yeah, it was like, why are we even why are we even doing this? Like,
Yeah.
and films that couldn't get certified just skirted it. They're like, all right, then we just won't get certified. In 1968, head of the MPAA, Jack Valenti, created the film rating system that we know today to replace the Hays Code. And those ratings were initially G, M, R, and X. And from there, well, shit changed fast. The 1970s was characterized by explicitness in films. Exploitation flicks of various kinds reigned supreme. Porn went mainstream, with curious folks streaming to movie theaters to watch movies like Debbie Does Dallas and Behind the Green Door. And while we've had many other censorship battles around other forms of art in America since then, particularly in the late 80s and 90s, which I would also like to talk about sometime, the rating system more or less ended that debate for the film industry. Filmmakers still fight for their ratings, as like a movie being given an NC-17, for example, now would basically make it dead in the water theatrically. And like a PG-13 movie can reach a broader audience than an R-rated one. We see that with Blumhouse movies, right? So many of those are PG-13 movies. They don't show you the violence, you know?
Often have I said that a 15 in 2022 would have been an 18 in 1986. You know what I mean? You can do shit at a 15 now. A lot of people will hastily bemoan a horror movie coming out with a 15 certificate. Fuck, it's obviously not much good if there's a 15. Whoa, sir.
No, there's a lot you can put in that.
Yeah. I've seen some 15s that have made me go, hey. 18s over here generally is intravenous drug use. The C word, which is cunt, isn't it? Repeated use of the C word will get you an 18. And heroin, sexual violence, that kind of thing, that'll get you an 18. Anything else, crack on, it's a 15. In the, I want to say, early 90s, we also the BBFC introduced the 12 rating.
So that's gotta be like our G, I suppose.
So you've got Universal, any fucker can go and see that. You've got PG, any kid can go and see that as long as they're with their mum and dad. Then normally, or pre kind of 92, 94, we would have gone straight to 15, then 18. Whereas in the 90s, and I'm going out on a limb and saying that I think Lethal Weapon 2 might have been the first 12. It was around
like we
that
need something
area.
else for this.
Yes, that it ain't quite a 15, but it ain't quite a PG.
Yeah, so you guys have kind of you have an extra rating, basically, because we that's your 12 is probably our PG-13, and then we go to R, which is your 18.
Okay, I'm just first 12 rated film in the UK was the first 12 was introduced in 1989, and it was Batman. Yes, sirree.
Fascinating.
Yep. We then put another fucking step in there, the 12A, which is a bit of a spicy 12. Yeah. The first
way too complicated.
I know, right? Functionally, how the fuck are you going to distinguish between somebody going to see a 12 and a 12A? But the first 12A was the Bourne Identity. Yes.
That, I guess that is a spicy 12. That I see it.
Yeah, I agree. Batman was the
Think
first
about
12.
the impact on the moron.
Honestly, a 12-year-old moron can't be allowed to watch.
Can't possibly watch the Bourne
Adventure and Peril. Matt Damon punching some fucking lad in the throat. A moron would be out there in the streets waving their fists about, trying to parkour across rooftops.
I mean, geez Louise.
Morons falling from the sky. Mania.
So all that to say, like I said, you can, like, your rating depends on what kind of audience that you can reach, but if a filmmaker isn't concerned with the number of theaters their movie plays in or with lucrative distribution deals, well, you can make damn near anything you want.
Wonderful.
Ta-da.
I legit enjoyed the fuck out of that.
Good. I'm glad.
That was one of those. I don't know if and by all means include this. I hereby allow you to include this.
Oh, this thing I recorded, I can use it?
Yeah, please. I give you consent. I've noticed since August 2021 or whatever the fuck was it 21 or 19?
20.
Okay.
You skipped a whole year there.
I did, yeah. Holy shit. I've noticed since commencing JOAG that I'm someone who you want on a quiz team.
Ooh.
Oh, yeah.
You all kinds of shit.
Well, sit in front of Mastermind or University Challenge or some shit on the radio or whatever. I find I got some quiz chops, and this cold open is definitely going to be one that I'm going to refer back to in the future.